All right, let's go ahead and fire this thing off. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the Rise Up podcast. And today we're bringing Jeroen back on the podcast, and we're going to talk about a couple of things. The first being is digital maturity. There's a lot of discussion around how do we know when it's time to do certain activities within our organization. And the typical progression we follow is that connect, collect, store, analyze, visualize. And what we're going to find out is that it's very important that you follow those steps, but equally as important is that you have to follow those steps in order. You can't start applying AI and ML before you even collected and contextualized data and that type of thing. So really, there's going to be two parts of this podcast, and that'll be the first one is digital maturity. With that, Jeroen, even though you've been on before, we might have some new listeners today. So let's, if you could make a quick introduction and just tell people a little bit about who you are.
Sure. My name is Jeroen Janssen. Been with Rhize for a while as an ISO 95 consultant. I do basically help with the modeling, help to translate from the factory into our model, our ISO 95 model. And I've been working in manufacturing for I think 15 years now, so quite a while.
Excellent. I think this presentation, if I understand right, or what we're going to talk about, it came out of some actual experiences where we've all worked with clients and then they're ready to start doing AI and they haven't even connected to their plant. They still have a lot of manual data entry. There's just a lot of things that for us, it's no, you got to follow a certain digital maturity. So can you talk a little bit about what that digital maturity is and that journey or that path that people need to follow? Again, reinforcing that you have to follow all those steps. You can't just start doing certain things out of order, and how critical that is.
Correct. So I think that every factory has their own level of maturity. Some factories where we come in and can have a look. We see that things are very much automated. That we see that there's a lot of things connected, a lot of applications in the landscape. But often you see that also data is like stored in Excel sheet, in spreadsheets, and also that there are quite some. If you have your equipment connected, so not all data is being pulled out. I'm not saying that you always should pull out all of the data, but you need to have some basic information to be able to to visualize things, to analyze where your factory is at. There is a stage plan for different stages into going to the industry standard 4.0. Maybe it's good if I share that. So I took this image from a PDF, which is the research of how that industry 4.0 would look like. And basically what you see here is that there are 6 steps. And as David already mentioned, you need to follow each of the steps to be able to go to the next step and to take that advantage of that more information. So that first step that goes back to the early 2000s, where one single machine got intelligence or got like a PLC, so it's got a computer that does more complex steps. So think about CNC machining or something like that. But still, in that first step, every machine was by itself. So you have one machine that's doing its own program, and nothing was connected. So in the second step, the connectivity, that's where you see that things are getting connected. So from just being one machine, you've got a production line, machines are talking to each other, not just between level 2 to level 2, but also upwards. So MES came there, so you got more connectivity. And the next step is that you got that visibility. So think about MES dashboards or you're seeing what's happening. And your KPIs, your OEE is a very good example for that. But to be able to do all these steps, you need to have the previous steps in order. So to be able to have a dashboard with that information, you need to have that line connected. You need to have that machine automated. You need to have a PLC in there to connect that. And even if we move further up in that ladder, so if we look at transparency, so why it happened, not just what happened, but also why it happened. And you need to do some analytics. And again, to be able to do your analytics, you need to collect that data. So you need to have those previous steps in order. And even if we move further up in that scale, if we go to predictive, so see what will happen, you need to have and maybe get some AI involved. And to be able to do that, you need to have a massive set of data so it can learn from that and know and predict what will happen. And in the future, when we look at step 6, do that like full closure loop, where we have a feedback loop that says, okay, this will happen, so I already need to adapt something in my machine to prevent it from happening.
So when you come in to start working with manufacturers, and you've had some 15 years of experience and been consulting with Rhize for many years as well. When you first arrive at a plant and we're looking to solve a problem, what's been your experience? What's that level of maturity that most people have achieved at this point?
It strongly depends. It can be that not just one, not just that it's a different from one side to the other side, or one company or enterprise to the other side, but also between lines it can differentiate a lot. So often what we see is that I think the maturity has connectivity. So machines are connected to each other and talking. So we have a work center which is there. We from the machines, which are typically the bottleneck, that's where all the information is being pulled out. So you have a KPIs on there, you have your OEE on there. But it could be that a different line in a different area, which is not the bottleneck of the factory, is a bit is in a lower scale of that staircase that we see here. So coming back to your question, I think that most of factories, they are between 2 and 3. That's what I see, and some peaks towards the fourth step.
So, what's been your experience in these that people, we talk about you have to follow these steps in order. There's a reason that there's digital maturity. You can't just go right from crawling to standing to walking to running. You can't run until you at least have been able to stand. It's the same type of thing. What generally has been the step that people want to skip? So I mentioned at the very front of this conversation that people, once they've just connected one piece of data, or maybe at least they're getting manual data from the plant floor, they're all ready to jump to AI, maybe step 5 type of thing. So they literally want to go from 2 to 5. What's been your experience that people want to do?
Correct. What we've seen in the past is that as soon as you start creating those dashboards, creating those KPIs, those are all stored in a database. And what we see, or the question that we got multiple times, is that they say, okay, here I've got like 3 or 5 years of data. Can you push that into a model so that we can predict what will happen? But often, if you do your analysis and you do a deep dive, like, okay, what is it that you want to predict? What is the bottleneck, or where do you want to see what will happen? It turns out that mostly you don't have that information yet. So yes, you collect information on OEE, on your performance. Mostly those are the first KPIs that are collected, but it doesn't tell you, or doesn't give you like the low, deep level, let's say, sensor information on something happening. Maybe you need to collect things like a pressure to be able to predict when a certain part of the machine will fail. And that information is not in the data set that you've been collecting for over the years. So that means that in that case, you need to go back a few steps and say, okay, first I need to collect that information that we need, and then give it some time for it to collect so that we have data to analyze.
Excellent. So what's been, I mean, there's been a lot of discussion around LinkedIn and, other platforms about, boy, if you're not already doing AI, it's already too late for you. And, as we just discussed, there's a lot of companies that really aren't in that spot yet where they're ready to start applying it. But I've also found that since people have been doing this for a while, that time to value is becoming shorter and shorter. That, if you're looking at your manufacturing organization and you realize that, we're really at steps 2 or 3, man, we're in trouble because we've got to get caught up. We've got to get to steps 5 and 6. I'm finding that journey, that amount of time that it takes to go through these is a lot faster because there's a lot more tools that have been developed that are going to get you there a lot faster, that have been built specifically for manufacturing data. In the past, it was a lot of, I'm just going to call it an IT tool. Well, now there's some things that are out there. So are you saying the same things, Jeroen?
Yes, fully agree. And also, I think that in the last in the last time, what's been changing a lot is connectivity. And we have, I think that all the factories, they have a lot of data, but that data is all spread around, so it's stored on different locations, and it was very hard to get to that. But now more like an IoT mindset, and so one a universal namespace that everything is brought together, and it's easier to access that data what you already have. So maybe the data that you're looking for is already stored, but it's in a different location. It's not in MES, but it's in somewhere in SCADA or a different data set.
Yeah, so I think it's that connectivity piece has generally been the challenge, especially as traditional equipment really hasn't had that. But more and more equipment's hitting the plant floor that has that connectivity, and the savvy companies are even specifying of, part of their buying agreement is that you will have this data will be connected, we'll be able to access it. It's not some proprietary type thing. And some OEMs have realized that we can actually provide this information and maybe pre-contextualize it, and so that's not just we're not just providing a point solution, that we're now it's the experience is that we're going to provide this data for you as a service as well. So I think really connectivity for a long time has been there, but I certainly think that the acceleration is improved. So any other things that you really want to make sure we drive home on this maturity piece? Because I see it a lot that, look, there are steps, you have to follow them in order. It's not too late. You're still okay. You'll be able to get there. You'll still be a viable business. I certainly wouldn't wait any longer. But any last thoughts or comments you have on digital maturity before we switch the conversation over to the hierarchy scope?
Yeah, there's another thing I would like to add, and that is terminology. So in if you go from each of the steps, you're connecting more systems, you're connecting more data, you're centralizing more data. It helps if all that data is not just centralized, but also use the same terminology. And that's why you also see at the bottom see that domain model and standing there. What I mean with that is that if you look at the equipment that can be standardized in ISA 88, and as further as you move up into let's say level 2, step 2, step 3 and onwards, then you move into ISA 95, and those two they work perfectly together. And if you bring that data in and already structure that in the correct model, that will help you further in your design, in your development, in your analysis, because okay, and if you have process values, it's already in the context of the job response. So everything is in the correct context, and that definitely helps bringing all that information together.
Yeah, we certainly talk a lot about modeling at the edge, and I think that really speaks volumes to when we talk about, don't look at it as just a way to create your databases. It's look at it as an ontology for your business. And if you've done it right, then I think that's a lot of what's enabled these future steps, 5, 6, and 7 to be realized a lot more quickly, is because we're realizing it get the data correct first early on in steps 1 and 2, and that makes it a lot easier to leverage and scale in later steps in maturity. Thank you for tuning in and listening. That's all we have for today.